The IT services is vital to our future, and actually creating a whole portfolio of packaged services to take our collaboration solutions into that channel, because certainly the whole collaboration space has expanded from being in the domain of that Pro AV channel and really opened up now into that whole IT channel, because IT is intrinsic to that whole collaboration marketplace.
Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Luella Fernandez, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Jason Court, European Director of Product Planning and Marketing at Sharp Europe. Today we'll be discussing IT services and how Sharp Europe has grown its IT services business through acquisition and also organically. We'll also be discussing Sharp's integrated portfolio across IT, print and audiovisual. So welcome, Jason. It's great to have you on the show today.
Hi, Luella. Great to be with you. Looking forward to the next half hour or so.
Yeah, so I know you've been in the print industry for some time. Could you maybe introduce yourself, your career journey at Sharp, and what your role is at Sharp Europe today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So as you said earlier, Director of Product Planning and Marketing for Sharp Electronics Europe. And reflecting back, probably too long in the print industry. So 30 years or so in the workplace, and best part of 20 of those very much in print, and then document management, and then managed print services, which kind of shows a bit of the journey that print has gone through as well. And then more recently, I'm just coming up to my 8 years of time with Sharp. So it's been a great 8 years, actually. It's been a varied journey, and still passionate about the business and the industries rather than just the print industry.
Having been in the industry for that long, have you seen any particular changes, over that time, and anything in particular that you think is shaping Sharp's strategy going forward as a result of the pandemic?
As I said a minute ago, really, when I first moved into this business, it was probably at the time analog copiers that then became digitized, and we had the digital photocopiers becoming these multi-function printers. And then, as they went from analog to digital, the next step was really about the service. So not so much about the product, and then managed services really started to gain traction in the marketplace, with large enterprise, and then coming very much down to small businesses as well. So that's sort of the transition that I've seen in the earlier parts of the industry. And then, of course, it was about how you attach further value. So document management and related document services then became important, as the opportunity to capture content, digitize it, and then feed that into workflows. So now really starting to move a bit further from print. And now, many of the manufacturers, we know that the print industry has probably peaked in many ways. And, we are looking at a future of decline, decline in pages, decline in units and things. So the question is, how do we offset that, but not completely lose the synergies with print? And certainly for Sharp, having taken that view and looked at our whole business, IT services is a natural place for us to move to, but still remain that attachment to print.
Yeah, and you mentioned, we'll come back later to the different areas of focus for Sharp, which are the visual solutions as well as IT services. But just picking up on some of the impact of the pandemic, have you seen a particular change in your business as a result of the chip shortage? Has that really had an impact on Sharp's business, and any other things that particularly impacted your business over the past?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, maybe two things. So just looking at the pandemic in particular, probably like every business, certainly the first 12 months of the pandemic, we were quite severely affected by that. But particularly in the print business, because actually Sharp, we do have 3 significant businesses in Europe for B2B. And of course, the print business, as people move from that workplace environment to the home office, That naturally drove down print activities. And then, of course, what people also started to discover was that those documents that they used to print every week or every month in the office because they could, and it was habit, actually they really didn't need to print those documents. Either because they weren't really needed anymore, or they could actually adopt their working practice to actually use the display rather than print, and work on the document. So again, that's kind of stepped down print volumes. And then also what businesses had to do as well was automate more of those paper-based workflows to eliminate the paper, because it was not really practical in that new hybrid environment. And what that meant for us was not just that immediate step down in print volumes, but a permanent reduction in print volumes, because even when people go back to the office, those new practices and processes will still be there. So that was certainly a struggle in the first year. Second year, as we kind of went through waves of coming back to the office and then going back to work, but ultimately we saw an overall return in terms of business activity, economic activity, and so print volumes, but never getting back to the original levels. And I would estimate that we've probably seen a 10% permanent reduction, and that was always going to happen. What COVID has done is really just accelerated trends, in the world, in industry, in life, that were always there, but now they've just come on a lot faster. Just briefly, the two other areas of our business, we have our display business, which was one of the attractions for me joining Sharp eight years ago as well. And again, through that period, clearly, as people move from that office environment to the home environment, then certainly collaboration projects and installations were put on hold because businesses didn't really know what was happening and had other things to think about. But then as people started to return back to the office and the hybrid working, the hybrid meetings, actually the need for having great Pro AV solutions and the displays and the underlying applications become really important. So that actually helped our business probably through the second year. But for Sharp as well, as part of our growth strategy, the whole Pro AV marketplace is strategic to our business. And what we needed to do was to take it to the next level of growth. And we had an opportunity to take a majority shareholding in Sharp NEC Display Solutions. So that happened in 2020 in the midst of the pandemic. But I think one of the great things that we've done in Sharp is that we've not been deterred from our strategy, still kept our eye on the long-term vision, and therefore the investments that we still need to make now. And the NEC acquisition was one of those. So 2021 really in that business was also a period of sort of some consolidation, building those integration plans, and then starting to execute on those, which has put us in a good position for this year for growth. And then finally, the IT services business. Probably the industry is one of the few winners through the whole COVID pandemic period, because suddenly companies had to make IT available in the home environment for all of their employees. And if you had home office print solutions, which to be honest was not Sharp's strongest marketplace, but home office printing, displays, laptops and such like, all of those vendors, the associated peripherals really thrived through that period. And actually Sharp, probably 3 years ago now, we acquired Toshiba's PC business. So that particular business unit, again, had a really strong period through COVID.
Yeah, and in terms of, you talked about those three main businesses, the printing, visual, it's a Pro AV and IT services. So in terms of the hybrid working model and how that's likely or very likely to persist now as companies start enticing employees back, are you changing your products and services approach?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the big changes certainly for our customers and therefore for us is that hybrid working. And again, probably like many vendors, we've been really focused on delivering solutions in that traditional office environment. So, what we've had to do is kind of recognize clearly that change and see that now that office environment is extended into the home environment. And actually flexes between the two environments as well. So, we need products, services, capabilities that actually can encompass all of that. And I think that's where the IT services capability is really helping us. Because it is the IT that essentially have to extend into that home environment, so that no matter what technology you're placing into that environment, you can manage that technology, you can ensure its availability, and also you can protect that technology and the data that's associated with that technology. So, certainly for Sharp, while we won't necessarily always have the right printer or the right display in all of those environments, we can provide a total service. And actually, as a services organization, what we can and do is, we can go out and source the right technology for some of those environments. We're not just tied exclusively to Sharp products. And I think that's a really compelling proposition to our customers.
Yeah, I guess it's very much that kind of best of breed approach that businesses of all sizes are looking for, particularly when they're combining those two areas. And I think Sharp has always been very uniquely positioned in the print industry in terms of having these capabilities for visual solutions and now IT services. And I think that's definitely where we see the market is going, is that companies are looking for a single supplier that can manage all those elements of that IT environment.
Yeah, for sure. That single trusted partner, maybe a cliched phrase, but that really is what we need to become and are becoming. And I think, Sharp actually, whether dealing with our direct end users or dealing with our partners in the reseller channel over the years, I think we've proven that, we are that trusted partner and we do deliver, a quality service to our customers. It happens to have been on print in the past, but it's a service that ultimately we're delivering. So we have that trust and customer base, and it's now really kind of building out on that. And probably kind of when we look at trust as well, I think you asked me a question earlier that I've not answered yet, which was about the chip availability, and what impact has that had on Sharp. And of course, every industry has been affected by the shortage of chips, which is kind of it's a perfect storm, really, isn't it? You've had COVID, which has meant that people haven't been able to go to work in the chip factories, so that's affected availability there. Then what we've also had is actually increased demand. Certainly through 2020 and even in 2021 from the IT sector. And then as economic recovery has kind of come back again, further demand in the consumer areas and things like that. And then further, actually, 1 or 2 fires in some key chip manufacturing plants. And as I say, that really has kind of created the perfect storm. But having said all of that, I think for Sharp, actually, we've done quite well through that period. We're part of the larger Foxconn group, one of the largest manufacturers and suppliers of electronics goods. So that's certainly helped us from a supply point of view. I think also our manufacturing teams have done a fantastic job of not just sourcing alternative supplies, but also looking at alternative components within the products. And as long as the product still delivers what it needs to, the components really aren't material to the customer. So again, we've been able to do some quite smart re-engineering to help us on that, and a number of other things. And therefore, ironically, certainly through 2021 in the print business, our market share has grown substantially. That's really helped us. And what we've also seen is new dealers come to Sharp where their existing supplier has not been able to deliver. They need to still support their customers and actually run their business. And so they've approached Sharp. And one of the great things for us as well is that in approaching Sharp, they've actually realized that Sharp is more than just a copier company and seen these other opportunities around display and IT services. So I think we're building some new long-lasting relationships with these dealers.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point that you say that the channel has come to you because of the shortages they've faced with other manufacturers, and they've been able to see the opportunities of other services that Sharp offer. Have you actually seen that they are receptive to actually, perhaps having been a more traditional reseller with the print only, that they've looked at Sharp's portfolio and they are receptive to moving into AV and IT services because of that relationship you're building there?
Yeah, it's mixed, if I'm honest. And we spoke earlier on about the changes through our industry. and actually why do you need to make those changes as well. And some of them have been driven by growth, but actually now it's really looking at, it is a declining industry, as we've just said. And so, Sharp as an OEM, but also it's true of all of our partners as well, have to make some decisions around, what is the future of their business? Does it lie exclusively in print, but with the challenges that come with that? Or actually, do you do something more proactively and take the journey to move beyond print? And then where do you go? But it's really easy for me to sit here and say that, and it's certainly not been easy for Sharp. And I imagine in some ways it's harder for the dealerships as well, as many of them are smaller businesses. And on one hand, you've got to keep your current business running while you invest into these new areas, and that's not easy. So I'm very sort of sympathetic to that. But not only that, what we're trying to do as Sharp for our dealers is help our dealers on that journey. But if I'm honest, we've worked over the recent years with many dealers, and there are those who their hearts aren't in it, quite honestly, for whatever reasons. We really now have to focus on those dealers that genuinely do want to make the journey, or at least try and make the journey. And I think, we've got now the offers, the range, and the experience as well, because, we've learned through this as well, and we've made mistakes, but we've also had successes. So it's taking those learning experiences and working with those dealers that do want to try this and help them through it.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, I think the course of the pandemic, it's really set apart the leaders from the followers, and that transformation that's needed in the channel is which companies recognise going beyond print and which are kind of happy or with this, with the status quo, I guess, of their existing businesses. But generally in this industry, it's ripe for transformation, and I think those companies that don't make that investment ultimately won't survive in the long term. And I think that leads quite nicely onto the IT services aspect of what Sharp's doing. So you started a new IT services division, I think it's in March 21, and I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit about the strategy there. I know there's been quite a few acquisitions, and maybe also follow on from that, what challenges do you see the partners to make that shift to IT services?
Yeah, for sure. So it was probably maybe 5 years or so ago that we made the decision that IT is a space we need to seriously investigate and get involved with, so that again we can learn from that experience and understand is it right for the Sharp business, and what do we need to do if that is the case. So again, it was a little bit of trial and error, but we took a lot of positives away from that. And while we were doing this in Europe, we were going through the same sort of experience and journey in the US as well. So this isn't unique to Europe by long ways. And off the back of that, it was absolutely IT services is vital to our future. For all the reasons that probably I've touched on through the course of this interview. But our next steps then were really, how do we scale that business rapidly, actually, because we have to offset those declining revenues as quickly as we can. By the way, a number of our competitors are moving into that space. And also, quite honestly, new MSPs are moving into that space. And certainly some of the larger print resellers, again, had made that decision themselves. And okay, we need to move into that market as well. So the route for us in that case was quite simple in many ways. It's acquisition. And that's the way that you scale a new business rapidly. So we focused on the UK as our first target marketplace. And in 2019, June 2019, I think it was, we acquired Complete IT. And their target customer base aligned very much with ours, which is sort of small to medium businesses, which represents a huge part of Sharp's direct customer base, at least. And we saw a strong opportunity in that space because probably until then it was served generally almost on a sort of a cottage industry basis. So, it was the small local IT business out of the village, literally, or the town, with one or two people supporting their customers. But in some ways it's become more complex with, cloud services and such like, and different business models and things like that. I think any SMB really now needs a reliable IT service provider. What we're also doing is in those smaller countries, organically investing in standing up our own IT services, taking advantage of things like the European Service Centre, the expertise that we're acquiring through these new businesses as well, and actually creating a whole portfolio of packaged services.
Yeah, and I think what we see, in that sort of IT services space, as you explained, it's very diverse and complex market with lots of different players, smaller players and big players, and we're seeing more of the print OEMs moving into the IT services space. But from our research, we're seeing that they're still very separate kind of go-to-market approaches, and the expertise needed to sell IT services is very specific. That traditional print dealers wouldn't necessarily have that IT skill, that IT expertise and skills to actually deliver these kind of IT services capabilities. And it's interesting you mentioned about the packaged IT services. So have you, I guess you've probably seen that in your channel already, because we already see that the channel, in terms of innovating their business model, they're still really looking at MPS and maybe the kind of document solutions, but in terms of IT services, that can be quite a leap. So are you going to be targeting new partners, or are you looking at the IT services partners to potentially sell print rather than the other way around?
I think both, quite honestly, and we talk about cross-sell is an important opportunity for us within Sharp, because we kind of got three groups. We've got our print business and the print customers and our print channel. We've got the display business that has probably largely IT orientated resellers, but nonetheless, they have customers that need PCs and print. And then we also have our IT business, and of course, all of those customers are buying collaboration technologies and solutions, and are buying print. So there's certainly the cross sell there as well. And actually, in many ways, there's almost a fourth area, which is our Dynabook business as well, that sell through distribution into that IT channel. And again, there's certainly opportunity there as well with that IT channel to create packaged services for that IT channel that are simple and cost effective for them. And also to take our collaboration solutions into that channel, because certainly the whole collaboration space has expanded from being in the domain of that Pro AV channel and really opened up now into that whole IT channel, because IT is intrinsic to that whole collaboration marketplace. So I think, again, for Sharp, actually, the cross-sell represents quite a huge opportunity for us.
Yeah, so Sharp has a really strong history of innovation. And I know this year marks the 50th anniversary of its copier business. And from having a look at the website, Sharp's in so many areas, from AV, IT services, print, and even solar energy. So perhaps you could share what's next for Sharp and how it's really focusing on some of these areas that will make a big change in the future of the office.
I think one is about making these technologies easier to use and to get the combined value out of these technologies, which typically is through software and applications. So we've been developing a portfolio of services that we've branded as Synapse, which is about creating connections, intelligent connections. That Synapse is firing off. And so the range of applications that we're launching, in fact, the third one is our collaboration hub. And it's about allowing our customers to capture content through their MFPs, for instance, and to bring that seamlessly into their meetings, or actually to take content that they already have in their existing repositories, whether it's within Microsoft Teams or SharePoint or Dropbox or wherever, and again, bring that into their meetings.
It's really interesting to see how Sharp, was a pioneer back then in terms of technology for the office, but also it's, just general sort of cultural sort of approach to creativity across many technologies. And when you talked about audiovisual and how, what we're seeing now is this whole rise of the potential office metaverse and how hybrid working is going to be, how you collaborate into whether you're remotely located or in a physical space. And I think it'll be interesting to see how companies like Sharp really kind of capitalize on those opportunities for that kind of integration as our digital and physical lives are blurring today.
Yeah, I mean, it really feels like the realms of science fiction, actually, in many ways. But it's out there. The technology is coming of age. And again, some of those technologies are coming from that consumer space as well, which is interesting. Of course, Sharp has a significant consumer business as well. And I know we're not doing headsets at the moment, but that's not to say that we won't in the future. We've got some great technology out there. So, yeah, I think it will be exciting times in the future. I think the challenge sometimes is, it can be a bit like being in the sweetie shop. There's all these great things going on, and let's move on to this one and that one. But actually, the trick is we really do need to stay focused and make sure that we deliver the value for our customers, and that our salespeople can bring to our customers as well. But as you say, keeping an eye on some of those other really exciting developments for the future and taking advantage of them at the right time.
Yeah, so that's been really interesting to hear, more about Sharp and its activity across print, audiovisual, and IT services. So, and I think, as I say, because, you've got that B2B presence as well as a consumer presence, there's a real opportunity for Sharp to integrate those technologies into a real key role in this kind of office of the future, whether it's hybrid or remote or physical. So, thank you for your time to cover all that. And I just wanted to finish on just light-hearted questions. So this is the first episode of series 3, and there's always a light-hearted question at the end. So, I'd like to ask you what your first job was, and if there's any particular lessons you've learned from your first job.
Yeah, wow, cast my mind back to my sixth form days when getting that job was really important then, because there's a certain lifestyle to fund as you start to kind of venture out into the world, down the pubs and things. But yeah, so my first job actually was at a greengrocers of all things, so probably pretty low tech. But character building, I think, so I would do an hour every morning before going to school, which, as a teenager, getting out of bed an hour earlier before going to school, trust me, that was a real challenge. And then I would do an hour at the end of the school day as well. And then I would work Saturdays. And, for me, it certainly, gave me the importance of actually having that routine, but also actually, doing the right thing by your employer as well, and having that discipline. You have to get out of bed, no matter what happened the night before. You have to get up and be there to be work and be counted. But no, that's been great. It's been really interesting to hear more about Sharp Europe's strategy. So thanks again for your time, and I look forward to hearing more about Sharp in the future. Oh, for sure, Luella. Thank you. It's been a great experience. I really appreciate the opportunity. So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please visit quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.